Why do we gaze in awe at the sublime art of the past, but recoil in horror at the monstrosities that pass as public art today? We're supposed to be an advanced culture, yet we fail to create inspiring art that lifts the soul. So what happened? Is it technical ability or something else? Well, it's actually because there's something seriously wrong with how art projects are funded and commissioned today. The modern West fails to produce Michelangelos or Raphaels because we prioritize consensus over individual vision. Art needs ego, but we stifle it in favor of generality. The death of great art starts with a vote. Let's explain. To understand the problems of art today, we first need to understand how some of the great artistic periods came to be. It all comes down to funding. A key factor in the proliferation of art during the Renaissance was a concept called patronage, where kings, princes, and popes provided funds for painters, sculptors, and musicians. Patronage was how artists made their living. They didn't receive a steady income unless they were actively creating art. Patrons would come up with the funds for a particular project, often church artwork or private commissions for nobility, and the artist would see the project through. In the Renaissance, for example, the most prolific patrons were the Medicis, a prominent Italian banking family and political dynasty who ruled Florence. Though they left a significant legacy in the political world, possibly their greatest influence was on art. Giovanni Medici, founder of the Medici Bank, was one of the first great patrons of the Renaissance. In 1418, he commissioned artists Masaccio and Brunelleschi to reconstruct the Church of San Lorenzo, and chose Donatello to create the sculptures. Giovanni's son, Cosimo, was also a prolific patron, spending approximately 600,000 gold florins, roughly $500 million today, on art and culture, including Donatello's David, the first freestanding nude male statue since the Roman era. The most famous protege of the Medici family was none other than Michelangelo. He produced work for the Medici family, and in turn they allowed him to study their antique sculptures. Perhaps some of Michelangelo's famous sculptures were inspired by the collection. Popes also supported the arts, especially Pope Julius II. Several of Michelangelo's greatest works, including the Sistine Chapel ceiling, were commissioned by Julius. The artistic explosion of the Renaissance was largely fueled by wealthy aristocrats. But patronage didn't end altogether when Europe transitioned toward more democratic means of government. Industrialists in the 19th century, like Andrew Carnegie, who became extremely wealthy through business rather than family ties, also contributed to the arts. Carnegie funded thousands of libraries, but was also a major patron of music. He backed the National Conservatory of Music of America in 1885, and 6 years later built Carnegie Hall in New York City. And throughout his life, he funded the construction of over 7,000 pipe organs in various churches. Carnegie proved that it wasn't aristocratic governments per se that produced great art, but rather the presence of extremely wealthy patrons who had an interest in bettering their communities. Carnegie's mindset best encapsulates the spirit of patronage. He once claimed that providing education and beauty to the masses was the noblest possible use of wealth. So why do wealthy patrons produce some of the greatest artworks of all time, while today, with the abundance of government-funded projects, we produce forgettable, if not downright ugly, art? Well, when private patrons commissioned art, they considered any art they funded a reflection of their status. Much of the credit for the ingenuity or skill with which an artwork was created was given to the patron who hired well or had an eye for quality. Patrons had an incentive to hire the most skilled artists so that something beautiful was created under their watch. Though it seems like a selfish desire, The masses ended up benefiting from the beautiful art, especially when commissioned for churches or public spaces. Paradoxically, the personal egos of great patrons actually made life a little more beautiful for the common man. Additionally, since art pieces were commissioned by individuals with their own personal tastes, art tended to reflect the particularities and character of the patrons. And particularities are what make art impactful, what make it moving. In Kenneth Clark's 1945 essay, Art and Democracy, he concluded that art was incurably aristocratic, and an example of the rule of the many by the few. Art is ultimately about an individual's vision. No great artwork was ever created by majority consensus. Rather, art is about an individual imposing his vision on the world. It does not require approval. Generality, on the other hand, is the death of art. But that's exactly what is incentivized when bureaucracies commission art projects today. They attempt to appeal to everyone, but end up resonating with no one. So what's the solution? Philanthropists like Andrew Carnegie provide a template. Wealthy individuals with the belief that beautifying the world is the noblest possible use of their wealth. For us to truly have great artists again, they need to be backed by those with the funds and egos channeled in the right way to invest in a more beautiful future.